Hi guys, welcome back to the Pageant project. Hope your week is off to a fantastic start. It's Tuesday here in Australia. Just before we get to the subject of today's video or email, which is going to be about religion and whether I think or whether I believe religion has a place in modern day pageantry. Just quickly, I want to, this is my new book. It's the first copy. It's a rough draft, the manuscript. As you can see, and I'll just say this if you're listening and you don't get to see, it's a beginner's guide to pageantry, how to prepare, compete and shine, even if you've never done this before. Because it's in its early stages, I just printed out a copy for myself because I'm editing and I much prefer doing that when I have a physical copy in my hand. I don't know about you, but I really don't like ebooks. I think they're very convenient, but I never read them. I collect them. I never read them because I like books to be my chance to get away from the screen, not to get back in front of the screen. But because it's in its early stages, I am looking for test readers or beta readers to give me some feedback, to point out any mistakes, anything they think I should add. And so if you're interested in that, just keep your eyes peeled, keep your ears peeled, your eyes peeled. I will be asking for that. And people who do give me their feedback and help me edit this thing down, maybe even give me a testimonial, I'm going to put your name in the book. There'll be a dedication section, and so you get to have your name in a book, which is kind of cool. And, you know, if you give me a testimonial, then maybe I'll put the testimonial in the book as well, or maybe even on the cover if it's a really nice testimonial. Probably wouldn't put a bad one. The cover, that'll be an interesting marketing tactic. But I am looking for some honest feedback. It is a lot thicker, 300 pages, than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be about half this size, but I just had so much to write. And that's because there's so much in pageantry that doesn't make sense to a new person. I remember my first time in pageantry, I had no idea what I was doing. I've mentioned this in previous videos. I didn't know that you guys can't swear, for example. And so I was asking my first interview, what's your favorite curse word? And she couldn't answer, and I couldn't work out why. But if you're interested in that, just keep your eyes open and your ears peeled, because I will be sending around an email and also on my socials to say, hey, you know, we're open. Not that it's an open or application process, but I'll set it up so it's very easy for you to get a copy of the manuscript. You give me your thoughts, and then, as I said, you get to have your name in the book, which is kind of cool. I hope it's going to do well, not because, you know, not for monetary reasons, although that obviously will be a thing. It's more because I think that's needed. It's needed, a guide to pageantry, a beginner's guide to pageantry. And I don't think that's out there. So I'm hoping it fills a need. We'll see. But to today's topic, which is whether I think religion has a place in modern day pageantry. And I say this because back a couple of weeks ago now, on my birthday, I put up a post, and I don't normally discuss religion in my posts, but I just thought, you know what? It's my birthday, and I'll go into this in a minute, but I've had my own journey with religion, specifically Christianity, and it's not been, if you think I'm here to try and convince you or to convert you or to tell you, you know, Jesus is everything, that's not my position at all. My journey with religion, again, specifically Christianity, has been a very odd one. It was really happened during the pandemic, and I'll get into that in a sec. But I put up a post about my favorite Bible verses on my birthday, and as I said, I don't normally do this. If you've been following me, you know that I have thousands of social media posts, and I don't think I've ever mentioned a Bible verse or my favorite Bible verses before. And a lot of people enjoyed it, shared it. I understand if that's not your cup of tea, no problem whatsoever. But one person shared it to their story, and I don't remember the exact words, I'm paraphrasing, but said something to the effect of, posts like this from coaches make me feel excluded or feel like I'm isolated, and that not everyone turns to religion for inspiration or for guidance. And I thought, that's interesting, because very specifically, I only posted this on my birthday, and I said, I'm going to post something different because it's my birthday. And then in that post itself, I said, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I think practice what you preach. and you got to find something that works for you. So I was very specific about it, saying I'm doing this because it's my birthday, so it's a bit of an indulgence, but also that I'm not here to tell you in any way, shape, or form what you should believe. And yet someone still managed to somehow make it about them and take offense at it. And I thought that was interesting because to me, when you're saying, well, not everyone turns to religion or whatnot for inspiration or for guidance, I get that. Yep, sure. But if someone else talking about their faith or their religion or what they got from religion somehow makes you feel less than, then I think you need some sort of religion in your life. Not religion, but you need to believe in something. I don't understand if you are so set off by someone on their birthday talking about their favorite Bible verses for pageantry, and that it's not about convincing you, it's just about sharing something that's personal. If you're so triggered by that, then I think you do need guidance. I don't think whatever you're following is working, because otherwise, if you're so serene and so guided, you wouldn't be so triggered by someone talking about something that's very personal to them on their birthday. And so that got me thinking. And I have friends who are religious, more so, I think, in a traditional sense than I would say I am. And I have people who are very not religious. And I don't, and again, I think it's very important for you to understand this, I don't judge people on whether they're religious or not. In the same way, I don't judge people whether they have a pageant title or not. I think everyone is individual. And I don't mean that as a cliche. That's literally the backbone of what I've done for so long, is interviewed so many people. And I wouldn't do that if I wasn't interested in everyone's individual story. But let me just back up. And I was born into a Christian family. I think by most standards, it wouldn't be considered super religious at all. It was just during my childhood, formative years, we'd go to church every Sunday. I didn't get a choice in the matter. I was baptized, didn't get a choice in that matter, didn't really understand it. I kind of resented it, if anything, because I didn't get a choice in the matter. And what really bugged me about religion was I couldn't see the point, at least back in those days. We would go to church. Some old guy at the front would tell us how we're all going to go to hell if we don't repent. And people were all, peace be with you in the church. And then outside, they would immediately revert to being pretty horrible to one another, basically. And to me, that made no sense. It's like if religion is supposed to help us live better lives, then clearly it's not working, because as soon as they walk out the building, they're going back to trying to run over each other in the parking lot, quite literally. I remember one incident where someone almost just ran someone over because apparently they were walking too slowly. And so I wouldn't say I was religious at all. In fact, I was quite against it. And then the pandemic happened. And as with many of you, I'm sure, I had a lot of extra time on my hands. And I had been thinking about reading the Bible, not because I was looking for some sort of religious epiphany. For me, it was much more an intellectual curiosity. During the pandemic, a lot of us felt very alone, very lonely. But more than that, we felt that the world was ending and that nothing made sense, and that there was a lot of meaninglessness in our lives. And I mean, if you just look at what happened to mental health, and maybe this impacted you know what I mean, but so many people's mental health really suffered during that time because we were isolated. We were by ourselves. All the plans that we'd laid basically went out the window. I mean, a lot of pageants didn't happen. I think Miss World was probably the worst affected. I think they didn't have a pageant in person for like 3 or 4 years. I remember it almost became a bit of a joke seeing, Miss World's post. Oh, we postponed. Oh, we postponed. We postponed again. It's like, because one of my good friends, Kristen Wright, who's now the director of Miss World Australia, I think she was Miss World Australia for 2 or 3 years. And it was almost like a joke. They'd get to within a month of it happening and then it would be postponed again. It's like, oh God, I don't know how you do that. But against that backdrop of chaos and meaninglessness, I thought, okay, I'm looking for some guidance here. Not necessarily from religion. I'm looking for some guidance. And there's this book called The Good Book, or the Bible, and it's kind of been a big deal. I still think to this day it's the most published and printed book ever, and it probably will be forever. But if something has been around for that length of time, and we can have an argument about the effect and the power of the church, etc. But if a book has been around for that length of time and that many people have read it, quoted it, not necessarily understood it. I mean, it is a very dense book, but so many people are aware of it at the very least. Maybe there's some wisdom in there. Maybe, crazy idea, there's some guidance in a book that's been around for that long. And if you think about the setting, the time, in the sort of where humanity was when that book was written, I think that really bears some thinking of, because humanity was pretty god-awful, if you pardon the pun, at that time. And I think the Bible was, in many ways, almost a blueprint to get out of there and into a more civilized world. I could be completely wrong. And by the way, I'm no expert on the Bible, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I just thought, you know what? I think this book helped in a lot of ways. Yes, you can easily argue that religion has caused more death and destruction and killed more people than anything else, and I have no argument for you there. I've said the same thing many times. I believe the same thing many times. And I will say this is not about the church or the official structures of religion. This is just about my personal connection and whether I think this has a place in modern day pageantry. But I read the Bible from beginning to end. Did I skim through some parts? Yes. There was one particular chapter or chapters in the Bible that's, so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so, and so-and-so had so many. And I was like, what am I reading here? I was looking for guidance. I feel like I'm reading the damn phone book. I will say I enjoyed the New Testament more than the Old Testament. I thought the Old Testament was very wrath of God stuff. The New Testament, I found a lot more guidance. There was Solomon. I don't remember specifically, but Solomon, Proverbs. I found what I was looking for. Here's the thing. I wasn't looking for necessarily a connection to God. I was looking for guidance, and I found a lot of it. And by the way, a lot of it's applicable today, even more so probably than ever before, in the crazy world that we live in. And the importance of things like truth, telling the truth, and if someone is lying, that you have to stand true to your beliefs, all those sorts of things. I was like, wow, this was written about thousands of years ago, and it's still true to this day. And I read from beginning to end. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, or maybe I put a couple of stories up, highlighting a couple of verses, but that was it. It was hardly me beating you over the head going, I'm reading this, you should read this too. But then what happened during my interview journey, I started interviewing again, or continued interviewing, and I noticed that when I was interviewing people who had certainly proclaimed in public were more religious than me, they would, post photos from church or post about their favorite Bible verses, or they had their favorite Bible verses in their bio. And I would notice that there was a deeper connection very often with those people, not about the Bible, not about religion. It was because I didn't mention this, obviously, at the beginning of the interview. But there would be almost this unspoken connection with people who had been a lot more religious than I had. And so again, I was looking for guidance, and I came to the Bible out of intellectual curiosity because I was looking for guidance. And then I got curious again. It's like, how come I seem to be having a deeper connection, a better connection, and a better interview with people who certainly would profess themselves to be Christian, profess themselves to be religious, even in general, whether it's Christian. I will say I don't think I've spoken to someone who's from the Islam faith, but I've certainly spoken to people from the Jewish faith. And again, I'm not here to tell you what to practice at all. And I'm not knowledgeable about, I wouldn't say I'm knowledgeable about Christianity. I certainly wouldn't say I'm knowledgeable about other world religions, though I would like to study them at some point. It's not a short read, by the way, the Bible. It took me a year to read it. I followed a reading guide. But that got me thinking, like, why am I having a better connection with these people? And then you would start having deeper conversations very often after the interview or after the cameras have been switched off. And it got to the point, and here's the thing. If we're talking about whether religion has a place in modern day pageantry, I get very uncomfortable when, for example, people are having a prayer circle before they go on stage. If I was a director, I wouldn't necessarily do that because I I don't know exactly what happens in when people are holding hands and saying a prayer, but if a person isn't religious or they're not of the Christian faith and you're praying to a Christian God, I think that's pretty exclusive, so I wouldn't do that. I remember I was listening to a podcast as I was going through the Bible, and this person was talking about how much she loved Jesus, and she started crying. She got very emotional. I found that to be a bit of a turn-off as well. I understand that it can make certain people uncomfortable, but it got to the point where I accepted, all right, my connection with God or my journey into religion, I'm going to do it my way. And I'm not going to, by the way, I still haven't been to church since back when I was forced to. And I don't really intend to, because I separate my connection with religion, I separate that to all the official auspices and constructs that have been made around it. So the church, priests, pope, I mean, I'm aware of it, obviously, but there have been so many, as I said, religion has killed more people than probably anything else. And that has to be answered for. There's horrific cases of, childhood sexual abuse with priests, and then that being covered up. And so it's very difficult for me to reconcile that and say, I'm going there for moral and ethical guidance when some of those people have committed absolutely atrocious acts. And so I'm not comfortable with that side of it. So when people say, are you religious? I think most people think of that. And I wouldn't say I'm religious in that sense, but I have read the entire Bible, which is probably more than quite a few Christians have done. But for me, it was a personal journey, a personal connection. It started because I was looking for guidance. And I thought, hang on, this book has been around for a long time. It's probably got some wisdom in it. Then I found I had better connection, a better understanding, unintentionally, by the way, with people who were religious, were Christian. It's not uniform, by the way. I'm not saying if you're religious, I'm going to love you and we'll have a deep... No. But it's just like, hang on, curious. We seem to have a deep connection here and we can have a good conversation. And then it got to the point where, okay, maybe I don't fit the mold of a Christian. Okay, so as I said, prayer circle made me a bit uncomfortable. People crying about their love for Jesus also makes me uncomfortable. But it's exactly the same with pageantry. Your journey doesn't have to look like anyone else's. And one of the big problems I realized was that I was measuring my sort of connection or my beliefs around religion or what it should look like. I was comparing that to other people's and going, hang on, mine, I don't feel as connected, so I must not be religious. And I thought, hang on, that's nonsense. All right. I think it's much more important that you find your own way, you tread your own, you make your own journey rather than just following someone else's dogma about you need to go to church every Sunday and then you'll go to heaven. And I'm like, hang on, does God really take attendance? I think it's more important to live a good life than live well, live as a good person. I think that's more important than going to church every Sunday. But here's my point for you. I found that it made my life better. And I don't want to argue, and I never will argue about whether someone is right or wrong in this case. I've spoken in the last 2 or 3 episodes about the 6 human needs: certainty, uncertainty, significance, connection, growth, contribution. If you need a refresher on those, go back to those episodes. I won't rehash it here. But the 2 that screw up a lot of people are certainty and significance. We call that the driving force, the 2 needs that you prioritize the most above everything else. And if you're driven by certainty, the need to control everything, and the need for significance, the need to feel important, that can really screw things up. And I found that so many people would use religion as a way, or people would argue about religion from a place of needing the certainty that they were right and the significance of, if I prove I'm right, then I'm better than you, I've won. And I have no interest in that, because what's the point of being right when you're miserable? That's something I really need you to think about. What's the point of being right if you're miserable? Would you not rather be prepared at least to be wrong? Not that you are wrong, but be prepared to maybe believe something naively that could be wrong, but it makes your life better and happier. I mean, again, going back to the person who shared my post on her story and said, this makes me feel, not everyone turns to the Bible for religion, for God. I get that, but you don't sound like a very happy person if you're posting up my birthday post and saying how it makes you feel disconnected. It's like, wouldn't you rather be a happy person? And this is what I get to. It's like, I could argue with someone about whether I believe in God or not, and I don't even know if I believe in the traditional sense, like defined by, what Christians or whatever would say. Okay, well then if you believe in God, you have to do this, you have to believe this, and you have to behave like this, and you mustn't do this. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't really have an interest in that conversation. But what I would ask you is, and take a very simple example, the afterlife. I would rather believe, and again, I could be wrong, but I would rather believe that there is an afterlife where I get to reconnect with the loved ones that I've lost. That makes me feel better. It makes me feel, not that I'm afraid of death, but it almost that, this, what we have on this world is not the only thing that exists, that there's going to be something afterwards. That makes me feel happier. Now, I could be wrong, and, after this, that's it, and I just disappear. And maybe, by the way, you go, well, I don't believe in an afterlife, so that's motivating me to do make the most of every day, in which case I think that's great because it's making your life better. Hopefully it's not making you anxious, but it's making your life better. And this is the angle that I've come to grips with my connection with religion. And, maybe it will change, maybe it will shift, who knows. But it makes me happier to believe in something like the afterlife. It makes me happier to believe that there is a reason for everything, even though it may not immediately be obvious, and even though, yes, unfair things happen all the time. And some things I think don't happen for a reason. It's just random stuff. And I'm able to keep all these different ideas in my head because to me, it helps me make sense of the world. I don't like the self-help sort of, you are enough, you're always enough. Like, there are some things that, go back to the pandemic. None of us were prepared for that. Some of us dealt with it better than others. But there are times when life is going to throw you a curveball and you're going to feel like you can't deal with it. And at that time, again, I would say, whether it's right or wrong, wouldn't you like to believe? Wouldn't it make your life better? Wouldn't it make you happier? Wouldn't it help you get through a really tough time to believe that there is a higher purpose for what's happening to you? That there is a higher purpose to this suffering? Because to me, like, if you don't believe in something on the other side of that, it's all just meaningless suffering. And in which case, why do I want to go through it? I don't want to go through this. It's pointless. And that's what I would encourage you, whether you're religious or not, is find something that believe in things that make your life better. I don't understand why people want to argue about who's right or wrong, like does God exist or not? Because very often the same people say, I'm not religious, and then they're fascinated by astrology, like, Leo, Taurus, Libra, and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, so you're saying religion, God doesn't exist, but you believe the position of the stars when you were born is somehow affecting you 30 years, 50 years later. And then they're also interested in things like numerology or following, I don't know, or manifesting. It's like all these other things that you can't prove that that's right or wrong. And I got no judgment for it. But it's weird that you would say sometimes that people who are religious, that stuff, no, that's BS, that's crap. Oh, but I'm interested in my horoscope for this week. Is it just me? Like, I don't really understand. And I think, all things being considered, you'd probably learn more from reading the Bible or reading any religion that's been around for thousands of years, like reading their texts. I somehow think you get more from that than following your horoscope every week or watching the latest episode of Love Island or whatever reality TV floats your boat. I just think it's interesting when people get so concerned, again, with being right, with that need for certainty and significance, that they will denigrate and go after you so aggressively for believing in something. Sure, I can't prove that I'm right. But then on the other hand, you are spending every week buying lottery tickets, or as I said, following astrology or numerology or manifesting. And I'm like, well, I can't prove that I'm right, but neither can you. So why can't we all get along? And I think the true test is whether what you believe makes you happier, more fulfilled, more resilient. I don't care whether it's right or wrong. I care in like math. Okay, 1 plus 1 needs to equal 2 because I'm not getting in a plane that's designed by someone who goes 1 plus 1 can equal whatever you want. No, there are times when yes, right or wrong are important. But outside of those narrow confines, I think you want to find something, believe in something. Well, I don't think. It's so important to believe in things that make your life better and more hopeful than necessarily going, I'm right, I'm miserable, but I'm right. I don't think you want to be that person. And so whether religion has a place in pageantry or not, I would argue that it's that person's choice, it's that person's connection. And by the way, not everyone defines religion in the same way. I would say I believe in God, but you probably wouldn't automatically label me as religious. And I think people are so on tenterhooks at the moment. If I say, yes, I believe in God, then you automatically label me as some Bible bashing person who's going around trying to convert everyone. I'm like, no, that's the furthest from the truth that could ever be. Like, as I said, I've already told you my story about why I read the Bible in the first place. It wasn't because I was forced to, it wasn't because I was called to, it was because I was curious. I was looking for guidance. And I do believe there is value in thinking you're not the most powerful thing in the universe. By definition, if you believe in a higher power, you genuinely believe in a higher power. That by definition means you're not thinking that you're the highest power in the universe or in the world. And I think that bears some thinking about, especially when it comes to pageantry. It's like, okay, I'm doing this thing. Yes, I got a crown on my head, but I'm going to remain humble because I'm just me. And there is a higher power up there that I will have to be accountable to. And again, you go, well, that's crap. There's no higher power. Well, it would help. I think it would encourage people to act more kindly, with more honesty, if they really believe that someone or something was going to hold them accountable at the end of the day. Even if they never told anyone else the truth, something is going to hold them accountable at the end of the day. And I think you see this, and by the way, you can say the opposite and see a lot of religious people who just use the Bible as a way of getting their certainty significance. And I hold that behavior in similar contempt, by the way. So whatever you believe, I would say it's important, I think, that you believe in something that's more powerful than yourself. And it's not about whether it's right or wrong. Leave that to the side. Leave that argument to people who have nothing better to do than waste their time, because you will never get a definitive answer to that. Until after you're dead, maybe, and then you can't come back and argue about it because you're dead, right? And when I say dead, because you maybe end up in the afterlife, but you can't really come back and argue with someone who's still living. Maybe you can, I don't know. But rather than looking at religion and things like that, and a lot of other things as to whether it was right or wrong, like the things that we're not supposed to talk about previously: religion, politics, money. Now we talk about all three. Politics, everyone's talking about politics till they're blue in the face. People are bragging about money on social media. People are talking about religion more. I don't think it's as bad as money and politics. But I would so enjoy it, honestly, to go back to the days where we didn't talk about this in like polite dinner table discussion. I'm not saying it should be repressed, by the way, because that leads to bad things. But not just bragging about it like, oh, I have a 6-figure job, and, oh, I voted for the Democrats or the Republicans, or you're a Democrat, you're evil, you're a Republican, you eat babies. Like any of that, no. I detest all of that type of conversation, and I feel like so much of today's society has devolved into that. What I'm begging you to do, imploring you to do, from my own experience, is you have to find something that makes your life better, worth living, and helps give meaning to those really tough times, those meaningless situations. And I've had them. I'm sure you've had them as well. I've lost loved ones overnight, unexpectedly. And that didn't happen for a reason, I don't think. But rather than going, am I right or am I wrong, find something that helps you get through tough times. Look, if you want to look at it through the pageant lens, find something that's going to help you deal with a really tough loss, where you really feel you should have won, everyone told you should have won, and then you didn't. And maybe there are even like judges who screwed you over in the background or was rigged. What's going to get you through that? If you've led your whole pageant journey for 5 or 10 years to that moment and you find out you should have won, but you didn't, what's going to help you get through that? Because I don't know if your horoscope will, or numerology will, or manifestation will, but, maybe because you read the Bible, you read a passage or whatever it is, the Quran, or maybe something there will help you get through it. And so that's my perspective on religion. I choose to believe in it, and I choose to believe Christianity. That's just really because that's why I was brought up. But I would ask you to consciously choose what you believe based on, is it making you a better person, and is your life better for it? If you don't believe and you are miserable, or you're treating people horribly, or frankly, if you do believe and you are miserable and you are treating other people horribly, stop. And I would ask you to re-examine your beliefs and find something that works for you. Because clearly, if you are treating other people horrifically, your beliefs aren't working. Something is warped and screwed up. And I am so aware that a lot of people have done that under the guise and auspices of organized religion, which is why I stay away from that, because I'm very wary of, attaching my faith or loyalty to a fallible, flawed person. And this is another thing. I'd much rather attach my wagon to a higher being who is perfect, for want of a better word, than attaching it to a human being. Because, one thing pageantry has taught me is that sometimes people aren't who they proclaim to be in public. And so now I'm very wary about attaching it to a person, attaching myself to a person, or to a pageant system, or to a religion. Because there's good and bad with everything that's human, because that's us. We're human, we are flawed. But if I want to believe in a high power, again, I don't know right or wrong, but it helps me believe that higher power knows everything that's going on, and they are perfect, they are beyond reproach. Okay, I can get behind that. Again, whether I'm right or wrong, I can get behind that rather than, attaching myself to a certain pageant director or a certain priest and then find out later they were doing something wrong behind the scenes. So that is my thought process when it comes to religion. If I talk about it and it makes you uncomfortable, that's great, because that means it's making you think. But I would say, whether you're religious or not, whether if you are living your life trying to prove that you're right rather than making decisions that make you happy, that's not going to lead to a good place. You can be right, you'll be miserable, you'll be alone, because no one wants to be around someone who just always wants to argue that they know better than you. And I know people like this. I've had people like that in my life, and they were miserable. They like to think they were always right, but they were miserable and no one wanted to be around them. And by the way, they weren't always right at the end of it. But I didn't want to argue with them, so I just left well enough alone. But find what works for you. Find beliefs that work for you. Find pageants that work for you, and don't repeat the mistake that I made and I know that you've made and that I will make again, of comparing your journey with someone else's. We talk about comparison all the time, but it's not just, oh, I look prettier than her or she looks prettier than me. It's don't compare your journey with someone else's, especially when it comes to politics, religion, money, spirituality, whatever it is. Your journey is going to be shaped by so many factors that make it different and unique to you, and it's a mistake to compare that to anyone else's. So, a bit of a different topic for today, but it's been something on my mind because as I progress further in pageantry and I find out more what I want to do, the topic of religion is coming up more and more, and I find that I'm surrounded more and more by people who are more religious than me, and I don't mind that because, again, to me, it makes me curious. I want to know why they believe. That's my approach of the whole thing. So I'm going to leave it there. If you have any questions or perspectives on this in particular, I really would love to know. So drop me a message or drop me a comment below. And as I said, this the Beginner's Guide to Pageantry, I will be looking for test readers for that soon, probably within the next week or two. I'm just doing a first rough edit and realize that there was stuff missing from it. So I'm glad I didn't put it out just yet. But keep your eyes open and your ears peeled for that. But whatever you believe, have an amazing week, and I'll speak to you next time.